Now we're ready to look at English colonization. This actually is where we start, where we make it to United States history. Up till now, it's been world, or pardon me, American history. Of course, American history would be anything in the Western Hemisphere. If you think about it, we tend to use it synonymously with United States history. Anyway, since the original 13 United States started out as English colonies, this is where we move on into what we're really about here. Okay. Um, the first question on your study sheet there under English colonization, under number 8, what was the basis of the English land claim in North America? I could easily create false impressions here. For example, you might get the impression there's a kind of international land bank where countries go and file claims. No, it's just if you had someone representing your kingdom to lodge a claim, just go through a ceremony of a thing there, and they got there first. It's all about the timeline more than anything else. And claims could be disputed, but that would give you a claim. Now, the English claim was very, very old in the grand scheme of things. In 1497, this is only 5 years after Columbus's first voyage, between Columbus's second and third voyages, um, an Italian mariner named Giovanni Caboto, don't try spelling that. He was known to the English as John Cabot. That's what we'll call him. He was sailing on behalf of the English King Henry VII, and Henry had sent him over to North America just to the west. I don't think they knew that much about North America. See what he could find. Probably the intention was to try to find a northwesterly route to, or just a westerly route. They wouldn't know that the southwest wasn't going to work for many more years. Okay, I'm getting this tangled up. He came back proclaiming the discovery of what he called newfound land. What he's referring to specifically is an island off southeastern Canada, still known as Newfoundland, and he had claimed that in the name of the English monarchy. The king rewarded him handsomely. He bought some fancy new clothes, hired 5 more ships, and sailed west once again, and has not yet reported back. Presumably, he went on to colonize some other dimension. Anyway, there's the claim. But there's not any follow up. We're talking crickets for almost 80 years. Okay, it would be 80 long years before there's any follow up at all. Because you stop and consider, somebody's got to get the idea. Somebody's got to visualize this, plan it out, make a case. It's not that England was just waiting for that to establish colonies. That's an idea that has to be worked on and developed. So why the long delay? Not that it matters that much. For one thing, very few people knew about it. And for another thing, England wasn't ready yet. And the idea of establishing settlements, that simply hasn't occurred to anyone yet. Um, and for much of that time, Spain claimed the entire Western Hemisphere except for the Portuguese claiming what's now Brazil. And Spain at the time was a hairy chested superpower with a mean streak, or was about to be. England was this one horse country up off the fringe of the continent and pretty much a minor player. Plus, it was during that century that the English business community, they didn't do this to get ready for colonies, it just happened. They evolved a system of financing now known as a limited liability corporation. They called them joint stock companies, where investors could pool their investments in a business venture, and the only thing they would risk losing would be the money they'd put in. So that's going to help pile up the mountains of money it's going to take to colonize. And the 16th century, that's the 1500s, were very turbulent in Europe. Okay, 25 years after Columbus's discovery, an Augustinian monk in Germany named Martin Luther, all he was trying to do is start a discussion, nailed the so-called 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg, and this marks the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. So for over a century after that, Europe divided up along religious lines. And some countries were Catholic powers and some countries were Protestant powers. The Catholic powers were more powerful, and so that kept things pretty much up in the air and kept it really too dangerous. There's too much other stuff going on to attempt colonization. So um, the English did make a small number of unsuccessful, I use the word abortive, attempts in the late 1500s. The first one involved a nobleman named Sir Humphrey Gilbert. He lived during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, who was the granddaughter of Henry VII. And she, in 1578, I think, granted him a patent, as they called it, basically a license to establish a settlement on her claim, which was the island of Newfoundland. England would push it much further later on. So it took Gilbert 5 years to get up an expedition. Started out with 4 ships. 2 of the shiploads of people went back. The other 2 went on. But there's something that would almost seem spooky about this. This is 200 years before the American Revolution. And Gilbert recruited his potential settlers. Part of the deal would be a government chosen by the will of the people. That's stunning for the 15th century. So Gilbert and his ship and one more ship made it to Newfoundland in 1583. They found it already populated. There was a prospering coastal town there called St. John's, Newfoundland. Nobody in particular was in charge. It was a kind of international community of fishermen from all over Western Europe who were working in an area of the ocean known as the Grand Banks. That's a relatively shallow shelf in the northwestern Atlantic off of southeastern Canada. So you're Humphrey Gilbert, are you just going to step off the boat and say, "Hi guys, I'm your new ruler"? He saw this isn't going to work. So he and his 2 shiploads of people started back to England, and the ship with Gilbert on it sank one night, and that was the end of his colonizing ventures. Gilbert had a much younger half-brother, Sir Walter Raleigh. And Raleigh's well known. If there'd been tabloids in those days, his picture would have been on the cover of the Time. He was high profile, he was flamboyant, and he was in good with the Queen. Now, the Queen never married, and for decades there was speculation, surely she'll marry somebody. Whom will she marry? And Raleigh's name was never at the top of the list, but it's always there. And Raleigh had, I believe, already sailed all the way around the world, duplicating the achievement of the Magellan expedition. Anyway, he inherited this patent, and so he decided to follow up on it himself, although he knew better than to try Newfoundland. He's looking at something much further down the coast, basically what is now coastal North Carolina. What he really had in mind was setting up some kind of base where English ships could put in for, repair, supply, that sort of thing, in a forward position, so it would be easier for them to go play pirate and try to capture Spanish treasure ships. They didn't really capture very many at all, but it was an ongoing game. So, in 1584 and 85, successive years, he didn't come himself, he sent groups of men to look for a suitable location. And the place where they came to was part of what's now coastal North Carolina. I don't know if you noticed, Carolina has a barrier island off the coast. It's the same type of feature as Padre Island off the Texas coast. It comes to a point out there called Cape Hatteras. I don't need to tell you about that, but there's a gap just north of Cape Hatteras. And go through the gap, and there's islands in there, and one of them was called Roanoke. So Raleigh's men went to Roanoke Island and built a fort. They built a stockade. And they were greeted with great friendliness and hospitality and generosity by the Indians. But they managed to alienate the Indians to violent hostility in less than a month. But they looked over the situation and packed up their stuff and went back to England. They made another trip over the next year, and things got worse with the Indians. So what was determined there was that this place wasn't going to work. The water was not deep enough for really large ships even then. So there's a change in plans. They're going to look further north. What they were looking at next, I don't think they'd explored it, but it could work well. about where Norfolk, Virginia stands, with the water beefing up there. I say you go to Norfolk sometime and take the harbor cruise and check out all the 1,000-foot long nuclear aircraft carriers parked out there. That would have done. But there's a problem. Now it's 1587, and the ship brought somewhere around 150 people, mostly men, some women, and a small number of children. And the ship captain wanted to go play pirate, and he didn't take them to where he was supposed to let them off. He took them back to Roanoke and dumped them out there. So here you are in Roanoke. The Indians are hostile, and you don't have a satellite phone. The leader, or governor, that just meant administrator at the time, was a man who had been along on both the previous voyages. His name was John White. He happened to be a gifted sketch artist, and his sketches survive. They're our only source of information about the Indians of that area, what their faces looked like, their tattoos, their villages, their canoes, their dances, what they wore or not. And White's daughter and son-in-law were also along, and while he was there, his daughter gave birth to the first English baby known to have been born in America, a baby girl named Virginia Dare. Okay, they'd been there for a while when Sir Francis Drake showed up. You know what? I said Raleigh sailed around the world. Strike that. I mean, start over here. That was seriously wrong. Drake had sailed around the world earlier. Drake showed up and agreed to carry John White back to England on the return voyage so White could, lobby for more supplies, reinforcements, and maybe transportation to where they were really supposed to be. White promised the folks that he would come back the next year. Our plan's going to go awry. The next year was 1588. Huge year in English history because it was during that year that the Spanish king, having given up on unseating Elizabeth, getting her out of the way so that the Catholic Queen of Scotland could take her place. See, it's all about religion. Elizabeth was queen of the leading Protestant power, and so in those days all you had to do is change out the monarch and you changed the religion of the kingdom. And a plot to do that, it came very close to success, and Elizabeth had reluctantly ordered her cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, to be executed by beheading. So the King of Spain hastily built about 120 troop ships. Their purpose was to carry a large Spanish army up to land it on the coast of England. If that army had actually landed, there's nothing England could have put out there that could have stopped them. They would have marched almost unopposed into London and got rid of Queen Elizabeth and placed a Catholic on the throne. By this time, Mary Queen of Scots was dead. They'd have to find somebody else. So it's called the Spanish Armada. And the English scrambled everything that would float and managed to fend off the invasion. The Spanish ship captains were not as familiar with the tricky currents in the English Channel. The English had better tactics. They sank less than 10 of the Spanish ships. But they prevented the invasion, and the Spanish fleet had to sail all the way up north through the North Sea, around the northern part of Scotland, back down west of Ireland. They hit a big gale in the North Atlantic. About half the ships were sunk. There's human tragedy there. But no ships left England in 1588. So it was 1590 before John White made his way back to Roanoke. They found the island. They found the fort. Everything looks like it's in ship shape, but it's overgrown with weeds. Nobody is there. There aren't any bodies or anything, but according to a prearranged signal, they had carved into I think a gatepost, an indication of where they were going. It was the name of an Indian tribe in the area. Looks like Croatoan. So if they thought they were in danger, they would have carved a cross below that or above it. They had not done that. So apparently they left in good order. White actually found his own personal trunk about 50 yards outside the gate, all rotted out and rusted out. I guess they got tired of carrying it. So I'm going to bring you back to the lost colony of Roanoke in the next little segment here. Bye.